Welcome to the original SEC versus Big Ten podcast. This is Ron from Oakland, live from the streets of Oakland, California. Here solo once again, continuing our episode 4 of our continuation on the SEC predictions and who sits outside of the top 3. We covered last who we thought would finish last in the division and who will finish 6th in the division. There's only 7 teams in each division currently, as last year in the SEC with divisions since 1992, going for a 30-year good stretch. So we enter into this season one win so far. That's right. One win. That's what the SEC bottom is showing right now. One SEC win for both Missouri and Vanderbilt, and there was a tiebreaker instead. There's possibility that both teams can possibly miss a bowl game. So this is what we're looking at. We're looking at who's going to finish slightly above them. And if you're talking about one game, how bad is 5th right now? Is that 3 wins or is that 2 wins? Or who do we have right now? So if Missouri and Vanderbilt are already eliminated, we already have Florida and Georgia, Kentucky, South Carolina, and Tennessee remaining. It's easy to say that Georgia's not finishing 5th. So you only have a few schools. And so we're going to dive into who I think has a big game for the program week 1, and that's South Carolina. South Carolina opens up the season against North Carolina in Charlotte. So we're looking at a big game in the beginning. And Florida has a big game. There's going to be a lot of big games in SEC that weekend. LSU and Florida State, Florida, Utah, North Carolina, South Carolina, the battle of the Carolinas. And so 2 big flagship programs battling out in neutral field in Charlotte, where the Carolina Panthers play. And we're looking at possibly starting off 1-0, 1-0, or 0-1. Now, I choose to believe that South Carolina can win this game. I think South Carolina has the better coach. North Carolina has the better quarterback. North Carolina might have the better skilled players. We don't know what's going on with, what's his name, Juice Wells. Whatever's going on with him, he should be able to play come week 1. We're only a few weeks away from season popping off Grandiosa style, baby. And so this is a game where you're starting off with either riding a momentum into week 3 or you're searching for answers already heading to week 3. And you're playing North Carolina and you're playing the FCS opponent Furman the following week, preparing for your first road trip of the year, which is at Georgia week 3. And so the consequences of losing this game versus winning this game doesn't dictate how they play against Georgia, but how they pick themselves up after they lose to Georgia. And that's where we need to dive into, looking into where they possibly can land in best case scenario. We're going to cover best case scenario right now. Best case scenario, Rattler is a top-notch veteran quarterback. The offensive line is healthy. 5 stars on the defensive line is playing well. The secondary is playing better. It's a good defense. The special teams is playing lightning and electric all over again, blocking punts and field goals everywhere you go. So under the best case circumstances, they're healthy. And under the best case circumstances, they're going to beat all the teams that are equally or closely talented. So under the best case scenario, they beat North Carolina. They beat Furman. They play Georgia tough. They come back home and beat Mississippi State. And they go following week at Tennessee. Now, Tennessee is slightly more talented than South Carolina right now, and they're both a year three in their programs. Last year, what you saw with South Carolina was they played a great game against Clemson, a great game against Tennessee after getting their ass whooped hand in hand by Florida. And the reason why that happened is Florida ran the ball on them and they stopped the run. South Carolina's offense did not score at all. They scored at 6 points on a fake punt. And so, best case scenario is they split Tennessee, Florida. So, you have North Carolina, Furman, Mississippi State 3-1. Say you lose at Tennessee and beat Florida. Now you're 4-2. Now you go on the road, you beat Missouri, you beat Texas A&M, who's probably broken at this time. You beat Jacksonville State, you beat Vanderbilt. You're still at home, and you're still at home in Kentucky, and you're still at home in Clemson. So best case scenario, they're looking at 10-2 at their highest scenario. But guess what? Best case scenario doesn't happen week in and week out. We have to average it out by your recruiting, by your returning reduction of play, development. What is your record of playing true freshmen early and they're playing at a high level? Are we seeing that day in and day out here in South Carolina? Let's get it. Let's by no means discount the coaching staff here at South Carolina. I think Shane Beamer's a hell of a coach. His background, when you look at his background, you see this is a son of a head coach, of a championship level head coach who won the only Big East team to win ACC championships since the merger. He's the son of that guy. And he's also worked for Mississippi State. He worked for Georgia. He's worked for multiple guys. He's worked for Lincoln Riley. So he came from lots of experience and picked up this head coaching job. And he wants to be there because he was there during the Spurrier years. So he saw South Carolina at their best. And he knows that South Carolina can be good. So 10-2 is their absolute best shot that they have at this. I say splitting with Tennessee, Florida, losing to Georgia, and winning the rest of their games because they've done it somehow, some way. And they only have – how is this that they only have 3 road games? I'm looking at their schedule. Missouri in October, Tennessee in September, Georgia at home. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 home games. I should say 7 home games. I don't know. Am I missing? Oh, Texas A&M. I'm missing Texas A&M somehow. Sorry about that. I'm staring at it. They got the same colors here. I'm colorblinded right now. So they don't really have any road games in November, and they really don't leave September but twice. And October is a road fest. They have a home game in Florida, and that's it. And so that at the best case scenario, they beat Texas A&M. And at the positive case in the middle, let's look at it from the worst case first. And so the worst case scenario is they lose against North Carolina, which is highly unlikely. But we're going to give Mac Brown the quarterback edge in that game. He said maybe he's able to score, and South Carolina just isn't able to pick up motivation and pick up enough for game 1. We could go with that and say, yeah, they lose game 1. Okay, and then now if they lose game 1, they're going to try to come and bounce back at Furman. But they know if we barely beat North Carolina, what are we going to do with Georgia? So now they come back on the road for the first time this year, and they're like, okay, we get stomped by Georgia. So you go into week 2 of your SEC already 1-2 and 0-1 down. So now you playing against a veteran team at home, but they're young, they're older, but possibly you could lose this game now. You know, it's really possible you could lose this damn game if you lose to North Carolina, because Mississippi State is a much better team than North Carolina. I'm telling you that. So you're looking at it and you're saying, all right, well, we lose Mississippi State. We're going to beat Florida, right? No, you're not beating Florida either. You're not beating Tennessee. This is the gauntlet of you have to build momentum with your record. And because you're not at that point where you get your bye yet, and you do get your bye after the Tennessee game, but do you have any momentum into this bye? Do you have anything to go off of? You're talking about a 3-game losing streak going 1-4 into your bye, and now you're preparing for Florida in 2 road games. Okay, so now if you lost to North Carolina, you lose to Mississippi State, you're not winning on the road. So you play Tennessee on the road, you lose that, you come off the bye, and you playing a hot Florida that just beat a couple teams, and now you're looking at them who's more talented than you. You say, hey, a couple years ago, we scored 40-some points on these boys that night. Well, this is no longer Dan Mullen quitting on it. And since Steve Spurrier, the record from South Carolina and Florida is 11 wins by Florida and 7 by South Carolina. Since Steve Spurrier retired, it's dropped down to 2 wins for South Carolina and 5 for Florida. So how are you going to win this game after you lost to North Carolina and Mississippi State? They're the second most talented team that you'll face up to this point. Then Tennessee. So you lost to Tennessee on the road. You're losing home right now. So now you lose this game against Tennessee. You lost against Florida. You lost against Mississippi State. You lost against Georgia. You lost against North Carolina. Now you're on the road against Missouri. Missouri, I already have them losing against you, but on the worst case scenario, it's a nail biter. It's special teams versus defense. Who's scoring in this game? It's going to be like a 12-6 kind of game with 6 field goals. So that's a barely win game on the road. You pick up momentum now. Finally, after all these losses, you pick up momentum. And you're going into now the second on paper most talented team, but are they the most developed team you're seeing? You're on the road in Texas A&M. Where is Texas A&M right now? Of course, originally, I got you losing in this game. So best case scenario, you win it. Worst case scenario, you're losing it because I picked you to lose this game in the predictions by Texas A&M. I cover my ground to make sure that I'm picking the winnings final for every team. I'm picking Missouri 11 wins, but I got 7 other teams beating them. We're not playing that game. Texas A&M didn't win many. They beat Auburn and they beat South Carolina. If I look back on the notes, I believe that's about it. And worst case scenario, you're losing on the road against Texas after you barely pulled it out against Missouri. So now you're only got wins against Furman and Missouri. And then you come back home for the rest of the year in November. You're at home. So now you lose this game, but now you pick up some momentum because you're playing the FCS scrub. You're going to say, remember, we're not Mike Norvell and the Seminoles. And we're going to beat Jacksonville State. You play Jacksonville State at home. You're not losing to them 20-17 with a Hail Mary at the end of the game. You're going to beat them. So now you picked up your 3rd win, and now you're like, we have to go bowling. We went 8-4. We can't miss a bowl. This is worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is you're in a nail biter at home with Vanderbilt. Do you win this game? I'm going to give it to you at worst case scenario because I only gave Vanderbilt 1 win. And last year, they caught people by surprise. Nobody's being caught by surprise by Vanderbilt. Everyone has that game circles in. They're not beating us this year. We're playing our best game against those guys. So worst case scenario, I got you barely winning by a field goal to close the game. Then you lose out the next games. Kentucky beats you. Clemson beats you. Worst case scenario is horrible here. So we're going to go down a little bit down in the middle here. We're going to give it a toss with the North Carolina. It doesn't matter to the SEC schedule. We're going to give a toss at best case scenario. We're going to keep it right there with Furman win. Then you lose to Georgia. You're going to lose to – you're going to beat Mississippi State. You're going to beat Mississippi State. You're losing to Tennessee. You're losing to Florida. I got you beating Missouri. No, I don't. Actually, I don't. I don't. I don't have you beating Missouri. I only have you winning two SEC games. You already won one, Mississippi State. So you got to lose the rest of these games here. But you might win North Carolina. You might win Clemson. So you lose to Missouri. You're losing to Texas A&M. You beat Jacksonville State and you come back and you beat Vanderbilt. I'm giving it to you. That's your second SEC win. That's why you're finishing fifth in the division. So you get that win and you lose to Kentucky. You finish out however you finish. Do you feel like playing against Clemson? You're playing spoiler. But depending on how you play with North Carolina, that's the likely scenario. That's what dictates your whole preparation of the season, the momentum of building off that 8-4 season. Was it a fluke how it ended, or was it just sustains a growth of the program? That's what we're going to see game 1 through game 5 in September. September is going to show a lot of exposure on teams on how well they prepare, So 2-6 in the division, that's it, baby. We really can't really go on it. Spencer Rattler is not that quarterback. He's a little guy. They lost some explosive gamers. They said he got better in tight end, but those guys haven't played or proved. You lose Jaheim Bell, who's a Muschamp recruit. Still have a lot of Muschamp recruits on there, and they're getting to the NFL. They're transferring out and they're getting to the NFL. Jamie Robinson made it to the NFL. So we're looking at this roster and we're saying, hey, what are you doing here? And it's even more ridiculous who I have going next, because you got Georgia at number 1 basically, and right now so you're saying I'm hitting at number 4. I've eliminated Vanderbilt, I've eliminated Missouri, and I've eliminated South Carolina, the usual suspects for being on the bottom 3. So who's next? It's got to be Florida, right? You got them finished no more than 4th, right? Not exactly. Schedule, they say Florida has a brutal schedule. I don't see brutal schedule. I see a schedule that sets you up for a good year. And a good year means you beat who you're supposed to beat, and that's less talented teams. There's only 2 teams that's as talented or more talented than Florida on their schedule this year, and that's Tennessee and Georgia. LSU and Georgia. It's not Tennessee. Tennessee is really close. They're almost as talented as Florida. They're really close. So that being an early game with Joe Milton. That's the name. That's who I have finished 4th. Whoever is starting Joe Milton as goddamn quarterback, you're really looking for a disappointment. Hey, the rise of Hendon Hooker was based on the fall of Joe Milton. And that was at Florida in 2021 after they lost to Alabama in 2021. They hosted Tennessee at home and won that game 38-14. It was year 1 and Josh Heupel. So now it's year 3, and now he's starting a new quarterback. That since that game, he's had Hendon Hooker. And Joe Milton hasn't thrown an interception so far in camp as of now. And all that tells me is that their secondary hasn't improved yet. Their secondary is trash, butter trash. They have a good front 7. They show goodness, good at times, but it's not consistent. South Carolina got stomped down by Florida. Why? Why did South Carolina get stomped by Florida? Because Florida runs the ball. Florida didn't have identity when they played Tennessee last. So you're looking at, what are we measuring this year? Are we measuring exactly the results of last year? No. You lost your best wide receiver. You lost your best quarterback. Your running back, he's a scatter. You have talent. Where's your tight end? Where's your offensive line looking like? Is the depth there? Defense, has it really improved? We don't know these things. So if we don't know, we just have to look at the schedule all over and just say, All right, now you won 10 games last year. You beat Alabama and Florida by a total of 7 points. So I have a rule. This is a rule. If you beat an opponent by less than 10 points, it was possibly a fluke. So if you were at home and you won a close nail biter, that means next year you're probably going to lose it. You can win them, but you can lose them. So last year you had Florida at home early, week 4. Florida was already banged up. About week 4 or 5, I think they had like 2 or 3 wins already. So you had Alabama at home, storm the field. No more of that foolishness. You had Kentucky at home. They were banged up by then. You only had Georgia on the road last year. You had Missouri at home. And you went on the road against LSU last year. They didn't find themselves yet. And you went on the road against South Carolina and lost your quarterback, and that was the ass whooping. So in 2023, you're going to open up a neutral game in Nashville, which is, are you playing in the Titan Stadium? I guess you are. And you're playing Virginia. Virginia hasn't shown much in the last few years. ACC team, they're not going to prepare you for much. It's not like Pitt. They had championship run in them the previous season. You're playing against Virginia. And what is Virginia? We don't know, ladies and gentlemen, but we don't think this orange team, this blue and orange team is going to give you the fight to prepare yourself for that first road game. So we're not going to play best case, worst case scenario, because the best case scenario for Tennessee is going 11-1 or 12-0, beating Georgia. And the worst case scenario is losing to Texas A&M, losing to Florida, losing to Alabama, losing to Kentucky, and losing to Georgia, maybe losing to Missouri and losing to South Carolina. That's the worst case scenario. We're not going to play that game because we're going to respect our opponent that beat us last year. We have them finishing 4th only because of Joe motherfucking Milton. Joe is not that guy. He's doing backflips trying to be Anthony Richardson Jr. He's emulating the wrong substance. You got to be your own self guy. You got to make sure you can complete those 15-yard passes, those 10-yard in and out routes, those slants. Can you do it under pressure, under tight man pressure? I don't know. Can you read a defense? I mean, beating up on Clemson hasn't been an accomplishment since 2018. I mean, since last time Clemson has won the national championship, there's been 3 different SEC schools to win. So we can't measure all that. Joe Milton is your quarterback, and you invested 1.5 million or 8 million or whatever in NIL funds to land Nico. Nico's going to play sooner or later. I'm looking at this schedule realistically. Joe Milton at his finest. Joe Milton being Joe Milton. You got Virginia who's going to throw pedestrian, but you're going to win that game. You have an easy game at home with Austin Peay. It's not going to prepare you. Then you go on the road to Florida and you lose that game by 10 or 14. Could be 17, depending on how Florida's defense is looking. Come back home, you win against UTSA. And I'm going to say this, depending on how Joe Milton, I don't think you really need a good Joe Milton to beat South Carolina this year. I just think you need to run the ball, run the damn ball. Does Josh Heupel have that in him? Is he all about the quarterback or is he all about running the ball? I don't know. So this is a game you have to run the ball to win. In the following week as well, Texas A&M, run the ball to win. But I have Tennessee beating Texas A&M. And I have Tennessee beating South Carolina. So you beat Georgia, Virginia, Austin Peay, UTSA, you lose to Florida, and now you're 5-1. You're 5-1. You had a bye after that South Carolina game, and now the momentum picks up because after that bye, because you won 2 straight at home. You're beating Texas A&M. But you're going to have a tight game close with Alabama, and it's just going to, I think Alabama's built to beat you this year. They're just going to pound the rock at you and play keep away football. And with the clock not stopping on first down, it's going to give these fast-paced offenses less advantage. And so you lose to Alabama and on the road, and you lose to Kentucky. That's 3 losses. You're 2-3 in the division, and you're in your conference play right now. You've beaten South Carolina. You lost to Texas A&M. You beat Texas A&M and South Carolina, but you lose to Florida, to Kentucky, and Alabama. And now you're 2 games behind everyone. And I have you winning the following week because you somehow snuck UConn in the beginning of November. You go on the road to Missouri. And so you should go 3-1 in the month of November because you only have UConn, Missouri, Vanderbilt. That's why you're always picking up momentum with these big ending of the season because you play all the bulk of your schedule already. So while everyone's anticipating you being a big-time game for Georgia, you've already got 3 losses on this schedule. So where's the momentum for that big game? You can play spoiler. So it's going to be a big game. It's going to be a nail-biter. Best case scenario is you can win that game. Middle case scenario is you give them a tough game. You give them a tough game, you lose your 4th game. So you finish the season going 4-4, but you give Nico some experience and he's ready to go into the next season with that experience, seeing some SEC defenses in these losses maybe, or in some of these other games. You're going to get to play against Vanderbilt, Missouri, Georgia. You might get tired of Joe Milton by after the Alabama Kentucky fiasco. And so can your freshman quarterback win against UConn at Missouri and Vanderbilt? I believe so. He has the talent and maturity to do so. And that's what really I see happening. I see a short lease on Joe Milton, finishing 4-4 in the division, in the conference play, and undefeated in non-conference. So 8-4 season for Tennessee. That's what it's looking like. It's, Heupel could very well beat Florida and Kentucky on the road and turn this into a 10-2. He could very well beat Alabama on the road, turn it into 11. You're talking about Tennessee with Joe Milton winning 3 road games. No, bro. No, we're not buying the hype. So 8-4 is a great season in year 3. You bounce back. You got the quarterback for next year. You get that recruiting classes, getting some experience, and you're ready for a tough 2024. You play against Florida, Georgia, and now you got 3 teams in the East that could possibly win 10 games. That's it for now. We showed you. So right now we have Kentucky, Florida, and Georgia remaining, but Missouri has been eliminated to finish last. We have Vanderbilt finishing 6th with South Carolina and Tennessee. Tennessee has a strong likely of finishing 9-3, but I just have them losing to Kentucky and Florida on the road, at Alabama on the road. I have them going 1-3 on their road games, and win all the rest of their games and losing only 1 game at home. Losing 1 game at home is a great season for Tennessee in transition. That's all it is. It's not a program issue. It's not a coaching issue. It's a transition. Joe Milton isn't the quarterback, or Henry Hooker would have never been. That's it. Thank you for joining us. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. We're coming with more. And we're going to do an episode covering both number 1 for both divisions. Get the pitfalls, see their playoff race, best case scenario, along with who finishes 2. So when we go with 2 and 3, next episode, we're going to go into the West, see where they fit, and then we're going to finish with the East. That's it. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Once again, from the original SEC versus Big Ten podcast. We haven't covered anything in the Big Ten recently. There hasn't been much going on. Big Ten doesn't have a lot of new information. The only drama is what's going on with Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State. But I feel like people are going to be put on notice and why Fickle is the best coach, maybe possibly in the entire conference. I think we're going to get an idea when we see Fickle in Wisconsin. People are going to wonder why. Should have USC really hired Fickle instead of Lincoln Riley? Then Ohio State's going to look like if Ryan Day doesn't beat Jim Harbaugh. Can we get Fickle? Woo! No one saw him leaving Cincinnati for Wisconsin, but he says, I'm a big boy and I'm going to coach with the big boys. If I could get Cincinnati to the playoffs, imagine what I could do with a Big Ten scrub like Wisconsin, who hasn't won a Rose Bowl since Ron Dayne. If they have one since, I apologize, but I can't remember it. You probably did back in at least in the last 10, 15 years. But if not, I didn't Google it. I don't care. You haven't won a playoff game, haven't been in a BCS championship, but I respect the program. Wisconsin, Illinois, Nebraska, those are programs that's on the rise slowly. You're going to see in the next year or two, those teams give a real hard game in the push. So we're looking forward into what's going on. The season's upon us, and we're going to check back in with you at another time. But thank you so much for giving us another great show, great energy. Thank you so much. I'm Ron from Oakland. Thank you for checking us out. Have a great